I often ask guys how it started for them, or why they started. Some of you can remember. Some of you can see how it all started, and others have no idea. It's a bit of a mystery to them. From my point of view, though, I can stand back and see the bigger picture. I can see the start, the links and the chains, the connections. You might never see it, but I do. Jamie could remember the start. That day when Chris came crashing into his life with a jolt. Chris was memorable for sure. Chris had touched him, made a connection, and as he turned to look back, what he saw left him transfixed. Fuck, who was this guy? He was so fucking cool. Jamie couldn't take his eyes off Chris. Chris stared back, eyes locked, but what he did next almost sent Jamie over the edge. Jamie was paralyzed as Chris performatively lit a cigarette right in front of his eyes. Jamie had never given much thought about smoking before, but he couldn't deny that Chris looked good, and he seemed to really enjoy it. Chris looked like a cool guy. He looked hot as fuck, and he seemed to have this overwhelming sense of confidence and masculinity that Jamie just felt drawn towards. Chris just stood there as if the whole world didn't matter, and the only thing he cared about was his cigarette. Jamie couldn't look away. Chris seemed perfectly happy for Jamie to watch, and he did watch. Jamie watched as the wisps of smoke were drawn in and out on Chris's breath with each inhale and exhale. Thinking back, this is how it started for Jamie, but at the time, he had no idea. Chris knew what he was doing, though. He'd seen Jamie a mile off and knew what he wanted from him. It started out with being friends. Jamie was so eager to impress Chris, he'd do anything for him. Chris decided to soften Jamie up to the idea gently. "Hey man, could you help me light up?" he'd ask innocently, getting Jamie familiar to handling the lighter and to the smell of the smoke. Chris made Jamie feel special. He made him feel wanted. Jamie trusted Chris. And then one day, Chris told Jamie, "I think you'd look pretty sexy smoking a cigarette too." Jamie really couldn't refuse. Chris had planned the whole thing. Jamie didn't know it yet, but this is how it started. Chris made it easy for Jamie. It was no big deal, just two buddies having a social cigarette when they spent time together. That's the start, but it's not the end. Before long, Jamie was lighting up a little more often. Anytime he wanted to feel good, or if he missed spending time with Chris. A cigarette always made him feel close to Chris. And because every cigarette felt so good, Jamie didn't mind at all that he seemed to need more and more. He knew Chris wanted him to be a smoker too, so it seemed like the right thing to do. And even if he was addicted now, he didn't care. Addiction felt good. Being addicted made him happier than he'd ever felt before. Chris was right about smoking. Jamie would never forget how it started for him, and he knew he never wanted to stop. And Chris explained to him that helping a friend start smoking was the least he could do for him. Chris began to show Jamie some cool videos on Twitter that explained all the positives about smoking, how addiction really was bliss, and why starting to smoke was the right choice for him. Jamie told Chris about his friend Jake, and Chris seemed eager to give his advice. Jake was a vapor, but had never smoked a cigarette. As Jamie lit up, he remembered what Chris had told him. If you care about your friend, you should want him to feel good. Make him try your cigarette, and I promise he'll love it too. Encourage him to inhale deep and let the smoke give him a rush of pleasure that his vape never could. Just because he started with a vape doesn't mean you can't help him to discover pure pleasure. Chris wants you to help him, Jamie. Help Jake give in. And soon he'll be addicted just like you. Addicted like Chris wanted you to be. Chris got you started, and now it's so easy to continue. So easy to need more. And you'll never forget how it started for you. How Chris made you want to start smoking and kept you hooked until you couldn't ever stop. You know how it started for you. It started exactly how Chris wanted it to start. Chris showed you exactly how to start, and he knew you'd show others. You showed Jake. And now Jake knows that it was the right decision to quit vaping and start smoking. Jake won't ever know how Chris started it all. All he'll ever remember is how you helped him to start. But in his mind, he'll feel like it was his decision. He chose to start, and now he never needs to choose again. All Jake has to do is breathe. You helped him to start, and now he never needs to stop. You showed him why smoking was the right choice for him. All it took was a little nudge to get him started. And that's how it starts. And now Jake loves his cigarettes, just like you do. You can see a little more of the picture now. Do you see how it starts, how it spreads? Do you see how it just grows? Maybe you show another friend too. Maybe you show a friend online. You might never meet in person, but you can show him how to start. And then, just like Chris started you, it starts again. And that's how Matt got started too. You can see how it started for Matt because you made it happen, just like Chris made it happen for you. You can see how it starts, but Matt never will. It's too distant now. He can't see it, but you can. Matt can't see how it starts, but he can show Andy. And I can promise you, Matt will show Andy how to start too. But Andy couldn't possibly figure out where it all started. It's only a matter of time before Matt offers to show Andy. And you can see now, Jamie. You can see how Andy looks at Matt the same way you looked at Chris. And you know, like I do, that's how it starts. The only one who really sees the whole picture is Chris. And he's pretty fucking happy about it. I'm not sure if he sees it all, actually. Maybe he doesn't see how I started it. Maybe he thinks he started it all. It starts with one. And then another. Another perfectly pleasurable addiction starts and grows. You see how it starts? Just one tiny little nudge and it starts again. One helping hand and you can finally start. One little gentle inhale and he starts too. And there's no stopping it now. You can see how it starts and it never stops. And now it's your turn to start. It's your turn to see how it starts. It's your turn to start smoking now. And once you start, you won't ever stop. You'll just show him how to start too. And you'll see how it starts for him. And maybe then you'll really realize how it started for you too. It always starts with one. You can start now. Let's see how you start.